We are definitely on a cliffhanger today as Washington weighs in the balance around how it's going to be voting on all these crypto bills. Today we'll break it down for you. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into the show. Let's get into it. I do want to thank our sponsor, iTrust Capital. One thing around iTrust Capital that's kind of interesting, and this is something that's happening on Wall Street right now, is there's a lot of these treasury companies out there that you can go in and invest on Wall Street. But a lot of people are doing that because they want exposure to many of these digital assets. Well, you can do that directly in an iTrust crypto IRA. All you have to do is jump over to iTrust Capital and you can get direct exposure to ETH, Bitcoin, many of these that will give you guys a chance to start to build your own wealth and do it in a way that is in an IRA. Best way to do it. Use our code right there. It's going to give you $100 in funding to get started. Check it out. All right, let's go over to a couple of points. I want to lead off here with Eleanor Terrett. And she's kind of hitting on all the points of where Crypto Week is right now. It's resuming with big votes expected in the House, including on the Genius Act. And this could pass and head to the president's desk immediately. So remember, this signing ceremony is scheduled for tomorrow at the White House. So whether this is all, which I anticipate, tomorrow we're going to get the Genius Act for sure. But in the Senate, you've got Tim Scott, who's hosting a banking GOP member roundtable. And if you look at some of the people that are involved in this one, guess what? There's a lot of Cardano people. Interesting that Cardano is made their way into Capitol here. So let me know in the comments. What do you think that's going to do? Let's take another look right here. If you look at the history here, the vote passed 217-212. I'm going to zoom in on that. House has now advanced the rule setting up for the floor votes on crypto. This all means that we're getting ready to go to the real vote. So when all is said and done, crypto was the reason the House broke the record for the longest vote in history, nearly 10 hours long. All of that happening now with the final procedure vote passed and a promise that the anti-CBDC language, because remember that was the hang up, will be included in the NDAA defense bill. This could move everything forward and possibly the Clarity Act. This is the one that's pretty important, guys. This will start to move almost everything in crypto, I think, in terms of how the market will respond. And I'll get to that in a second. Further into this, when you look at the Clarity and the Genius and the anti-CBDC language, which is attached in this defense spending bill, the vote is still open. And remember, this is just a vote on the rule, not the final vote in the bills themselves. So that's why the Genius won't come up until tomorrow. And that's the important day. So if you're watching this before Friday, Friday's the day that everybody's watching right now. So keep a close eye on DC. President Trump says the Genius Act will be passed today after speaking with all holdouts today. Bloomberg is reporting on this. And I think he means passed and then him to sign maybe tomorrow, but it's really going to be tomorrow, I think, when the vote actually occurs. I want to go to a clip real quick. And this clip is CNBC talking about how many Dems are on board to make all this come true. Take a look.
Nothing's perfect. There are things that I would like to have gotten in here, but I've learned a long time ago I'd rather get progress, get something done. We'll come back and do more versus doing nothing because you can't get everything you want. And listen, the Freedom Caucus, the far-right extremists, that's what they always do, right? They were looking for anything that they didn't love about this bill and trying to stop it.
How many Democrats are on board with this? You can point to the Freedom Caucus, but there's a huge number of Democrats that will not support this.
On the Genius Act, I think you'll get numbers over 70 or so, and we'll see what the final tally is. Again, you'll have a couple dozen or more on the Clarity Act. So those are very strong bipartisan numbers, especially, as you know, right now in this environment where bipartisanship is tougher and getting people on board on these things, no matter what, is tough. But this is going to be seen as two great bipartisan products that move over. One will go to the president's desk. The Clarity Act will go to the Senate, and we'll continue to work on that and hopefully get that done this year.
That's a big deal. I think when you look at if we can push the Clarity Act over to the Senate, that will start to put things in play. And the president coming in with the Genius Act, of course, that being stablecoins. This, I think, all moves the market in the right direction. Now, of course, we do have one person that looks at it differently, and that's Elizabeth Warren. I've got a clip of her saying what kind of impact she thinks this market is going to get with all this happening. Take a look.
Guardrails to make sure that crypto isn't used to blow up our entire economy. So I'm very worried about that, but I want to add one more twist, and that is the Clarity bill has all those problems, but it also has a provision in it that would let any company listed on the New York Stock Exchange opt out of SEC regulation by just digitizing themselves, put themselves on the blockchain, and all of a sudden it turns out that Amazon or Meta or General Motors is no longer governed by the SEC. You do realize that literally would blow up the value of the New York Stock Exchange. That whole.
All right. Well, the good thing is that Warren is absolutely wrong there. So good that that's not going to happen. So don't worry about that. Again, I think she needs to get her facts straight. The other thing I want to get into is what is more important, because obviously stablecoins, everybody's been leaning in on that. This changes the banking infrastructure. We'll start to see payments, e-commerce, all things affected. And also the US dollar plays into this, because now the dollar is going to be available pretty much anywhere via a stablecoin. Take a look at this clip, because this gets into, should it be the priority? Take a look.
I think, to be honest, this is a bit of a failure on the industry's part to play this the correct way politically. I think it was a mistake to have all three of these bills voted on at the same time, as opposed to starting with the Genius Act, which is a sort of important must pass and what should be uncontroversial bill to provide a regulatory framework for stablecoins. And then I think it's a failure to educate some of the key folks involved. But I think that the future of crypto legislation really does sort of hang on whether we are able to get the Genius Act specifically passed into law or not. If we do so, I think that will provide momentum for future legislative efforts. And I think if that doesn't happen, it's going to be very hard to convince House leadership to take up crypto legislation in the future. So I really do think, the Genius Act for the industry is a must-pass bill if we're going to move forward with any of our legislative priorities.
So interesting statements there. I think the point he was getting at is obviously the Genius Act, very important on being able to move crypto forward as a whole. But I don't know that the industry, meaning the crypto industry, had anything in terms of a guidance, because trying to guide what's happening in Capitol Hill is almost impossible. What you can do is influence, and then Congress will start to move this into play. It's really on Congress trying to get this through. And in many cases, they do it for a variety of different kinds of reasons, lobby reasons, finance reasons, reasons for them to just be able to exit and move on to other bills. There's a lot of that going on. So we have to kind of get out from behind the idea is that this is all that's happening in DC right now. That's the one thing that I think what he was trying to say is that Clarity and Genius coming together at one time, maybe it's just an issue where Congress is trying to wrap all this stuff up and abide by what President Trump has been pushing, which is an August deadline. So that's the other thing that is going in place right now. With all this happening, though, there's a couple of points that are going on that I think a lot of people are missing here. This is Robbie Ferguson from Immutable, and he's hitting on a very interesting statement here. What he says is Immutable's partner with 3 multi-billion-dollar studios and all together closely watching, keywords here, regulatory landscape in the U.S. to guide decision making. So think about this right now. There are, if they're partnered with $3 billion companies, multi-billion-dollar companies, imagine the amount of partnerships that are out there in crypto land right now that are all watching on what's happening in the next few days in DC. That is huge, because it tells you that the Clarity Act could have much more global impact than maybe a lot of people are even anticipating. So watch out for that going forward. Other things, of course, you've got Bitmine Immersion Technology, BMNR, purchasing another 137,000 in ETH. This is overtaking Sharplink Gaming to become the #1 holder. And it's kind of been back and forth between these two right now when it comes to ETH reserve companies. With BMNR, obviously that's Tom Lee and a Fundstrat. So you guys have seen that. Sharplink, of course, en route to our first stop, which is 1 million ETH is what they're trying to get to. So they continue to do a good job on promoting this. And for many people, I think this is something that if you're brand new to our show, you're probably trying to figure out what's an ETH Treasury company. Basically, it's a publicly traded company that has started to purchase Ethereum, put it on their sheets, their balance sheets, basically in their value proposition to the market. Some cases, some companies also offer other services, but some cases they're just holding it, much like what Master Being Strategy does for Bitcoin. And this is something that has continued to get very, very popular on Wall Street. Question is will it be popular enough to continue the curve going forward? Well, some people think it is. Here's optimism jumping in on this. The foundation is now officially launching and joining the strategic ETH reserve concept, and they're putting in their 18,000 ETH in Treasury. And of course, this just starts to pile in more companies that will be getting to these strategic ETH reserves. There's the list right there. Bitmine Immersion Tech, that's BMNR. That's the ticker right there. There's SBET. And of course, the Ethereum Foundation, now number 3, 2 ahead of it overall. Keep an eye on this MNAV right here, because this is the thing that everybody is concerned about. And I just had a guest on today that is concerned that these could blow up. So when you're investing in these, guys, just remember these are highly, highly risky moves. The key here is making sure that MNAV is as close to the value of that project or that company as possible. Other things I want to hit on right here. President Trump claims that the Fed Chair Powell is already under investigation. It's unclear exactly what the investigation is for. So now we have a pseudo investigation that supposedly is happening around Chair Powell. I don't know if there's being more, if they're ramping up the pressure because of something that the White House is expecting economically, or if this is just something that has been working its way through the White House and eventually starts to move into this position. And I think this is getting very, very sketchy, because I think there's two things that this could play out. First of all, I'm not a big fan of Chair Powell. He's holding up what I think should be rate cuts. Yes, I agree with that. Why he's doing that? Yes, I think it's political. But at the point of being able to circumvent what the Fed can do by putting him under investigation, unless he's really done something wrong, why is that? This seems like just a political Ponzi move on the White House right now. Here's a clip that kind of talks about this and what this might look like in terms of a transition between chairs. Take a look.
So this is about the administration trying to put more pressure on the Fed and really win not in a court of law, but in a court of public opinion.
Is this the worst you think it's been, or sort of par for the course?
It's the worst in our, kind of modern experience. I think the other point here is that we are going to have the most unusual Fed transition ever, since at least the Volcker one, because in '87, Volcker to Greenspan, in '06, when Bernanke came in, Yellen in 2014, Powell, they all pledged continuity with their predecessor. They said, I'm going to step into the shoes of my predecessor. I'm going to try to be the same Fed. And now we have people who are running for the job who are saying, I'm going to be completely different.
You make the argument that actually the independence of the Fed is already over.
So it's obviously what the president's doing here is putting the next Fed chair in a very difficult position, right? They're going to have to prove to the market that they're not what everybody thinks they are. But you still have 11 other people who are going to vote on monetary policy. So I think the risk here is that, Jeb Bush said you have to lose the primary to win the general. You may have to win the chair and lose the committee, and you become a chair in name only if you push this too hard. So
is there anyone in the world that could do the right thing a year before it happens?
This is all about making the mistake that's easier to fix, right? That's one way to think about risk management. Are you going to get off sides? If you think you're going to get off sides, you just want to make sure that you don't have to jump too far back.
Very good.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Just, if you are going to make mistakes, it's got to be the one that's easiest to fix. One other thing that is happening right now in the market that was a little surprising to me, and this is, of course, Senator Lummis talking about this. She's alarmed by reports that the U.S. has sold off or lost, we don't know which, over 80% of its Bitcoin reserves, leaving just 29,000 coins. So if this is true, this would be a big mess up by the U.S., especially at the pace in which we're going into what could be a digital asset race globally overall. So not a good move and not a good look right now. Other news out, I put a tweet out on this. XRP soared above 190 billion in market cap for the first time ever. This is again going into rapid adoption, obviously with cross-border payments and potential growing financial institutions coming in and gaining more confidence around Ripple's technologies. All right, so let's jump to the chart real quick, and you can kind of see there's Bitcoin moving. ETH, of course, continuing to move on its way to 3,500. Could happen very quickly. And then, of course, here is XRP, which is pushing now at 334. Amazing as we are breaking this down. This is this chart just continues to surprise me. I think a lot of the people of the XRP army love what they're seeing right now. Make sure and, of course, drop some comments down below on some of the tokens you're watching right now. With all of this happening in DC as we are, What is it that would be your next move? Where are you potentially trying to set up an insertion? Because if we get a Clarity Act through, guys, you're going to see some explosions coming into the market for sure. Let's go over to one last tweet here I want to show, and this is Raoul Powell. Now, Raoul gives some really good advice here that I want to, he's been on the show before. I think we're going to have him back soon. What he says here is, follow him, first of all, go out there on X, just Raoul GMI. He says what you want to look at with these kinds of situations right now that we're facing is the conviction. What conviction around the token or the project that you guys believe in? So it's going to outperform, whether it outperforms Sol, ETH, Bitcoin, whatever it needs to do. The key is do you believe in what they're doing? And if you're doing the research, which if you're watching our show, you are doing the research, you should be taking that time right now to really understand the projects you're investing in. You probably do this on a publicly traded stock, I assume. You'd probably do this on almost any financial investment out there. Do not follow the people that just say, go invest, this is flying, go invest in that. You want to get in on something that you understand. Maybe you don't understand the tech to, down to the macro level, but you understand the goal of what that project is all about. And I think that's important. If you look at his bags right now, he's going in with SWI, ETH, via some NFTs, and then a smattering of other, including XRP, Doge, SCF, Bitcoin, Sol. You can kind of see. And he puts these out there. He's very public. I know he sits on, I think he's an advisor with the SWI network, but he puts that stuff out there. And you should be looking at, how people like Raoul, even myself, how we make these moves, but you should not follow us. You should kind of follow in your own lane. Bitcoin, ETH, Solana, XRP, those are the top market caps. Those are easy plays, but they're not going to be massive gains from where you are right now in the market. So think about all those kind of things as you put your strategy together. Going into crypto, if you guys are not part of the Diamond Circle, get in and do that. It is our own free group, and we always leave a link down in the bottom. Use that and jump in. We send out an email, we give you guys updates and additional information. Sometimes we drop more research in there. We just dropped a big research treasure trove in there last week from our DGen list. So make sure and click that. Follow me out there on X, @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on The Paul Barron Show.